In 2010, Helen Kaplan sat in a small apartment in Canada, staring at her laptop screen. She'd been stuck there for weeks without a passport, without money, and without hope. Her family back in the UK had stolen her inheritance. At least, that's what she believed. And now, she was ready to do something about it. She'd found a website that seemed to offer exactly what she needed: rentahitman.com. The site looked legitimate enough. There were customer testimonials from satisfied clients, a careers page for aspiring contractors, even a confidentiality agreement through something called HIPAA, the Hitman Information Privacy and Protection Act of 1964. Helen carefully typed out her request. 3 names, 3 addresses, 3 family members who'd ruined her life. She included their daily routines, their workplaces, and everything else a professional would need. She clicked send and waited. What happened next would become headlines around the world, because within days, there was indeed a knock on Helen's door. But the person standing there wasn't carrying a weapon, they were carrying handcuffs. Helen Kaplan had just become the first person arrested by a website that was never supposed to be real. A parody site so obvious that it literally had a link to the FBI on its homepage. Yet somehow, she wouldn't be the last. This is the story of rentahitman.com, a joke that accidentally became one of law enforcement's most effective tools. Our story begins in 2005 with Bob Ines, a college student in California studying computer network security. Bob and his friends had an idea for a business. They'd become penetration testers, which is tech speak for people who get paid to hack into company systems and to find vulnerabilities before the bad guys do. They thought of themselves as digital hitmen, taking out security flaws for a price. So when it came time to buy a domain name, Bob thought he was being clever. rentahitman.com. It was perfect. A little play on words that their tech-savvy clients would appreciate. Except the business never happened. After graduation, Bob's partners got other jobs and moved on. Bob was left with nothing but a domain name he'd paid $9.20 for and a vague sense of disappointment. He threw his email address on the homepage, hoping someone might want to buy the domain, then forgot about it completely. For 2.5 years, rentahitman.com sat there in the forgotten corners of the internet, gathering digital dust. Until one day in 2010, Bob got curious. What if someone had tried to contact him? He logged into the old email account. His inbox had 300 messages. Most were spam, and some were obvious jokes. But as Bob scrolled through, his amusement turned to horror. Mixed in with the nonsense were detailed requests for murder. Real names, real addresses, real people who wanted other real people dead. Bob had accidentally created a murder-for-hire honeypot. Let's go back to Helen Kaplan. When Bob first read her email, he almost dismissed it. The message was chaotic and somewhat unclear, full of accusations about stolen inheritance and family betrayal. It read like the rantings of someone having a breakdown. But then came the second email. Subject line, urgent. This time, Helen had done her homework. She'd included the target's full names, their addresses in the UK, even their daily schedules. She mentioned that she needed this done quickly because she was stuck in Canada without proper documentation. She was ready to pay. Bob stared at his screen for a long time. This wasn't a joke. This woman was actually trying to hire someone to kill her family members. And if he ignored it, if he just deleted the email and moved on, 3 people might die. So Bob made a decision that would change his life forever. He wrote back, "Do you still require our services? I can put you in contact with a field operative." Helen responded within hours, yes. But instead of assigning a hitman, Bob printed out every email and walked into his local police station. The officers were skeptical at first. A website offering hitman services on the regular internet? But when they saw the emails, they realized this was serious. The information was passed to Canadian authorities, who discovered something interesting. Helen Kaplan was already wanted in the UK for other crimes. They arrested her immediately. She spent 126 days in Canadian jail before being extradited. 3 lives potentially saved, all because Bob Irons decided to check his old email account. This first arrest changed everything for Bob. He realized his abandoned joke website could actually save lives, but he also realized something else. If one person had fallen for it, others might too. So Bob made a decision. Instead of taking the site down, he'd turn it into a trap. But it had to be done carefully, making it too obviously fake and dangerous people wouldn't bite. Make it too real, and he might actually be breaking the law himself. Bob's solution was brilliant in its simplicity. He redesigned the site to look professional, but included just enough red flags that any reasonable person would get the joke. He created a fake confidentiality agreement called HIPAA, the Hitman Information Privacy and Protection Act of 1964. Anyone who knows what HIPAA actually is would immediately spot this as satire. He added a banner at the top that literally linked to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. He invented a stereotypical mobster persona named Guido Finelli to handle communications. The testimonials page featured satisfied customers like Laura, who wrote, "Caught my husband cheating with the babysitter and our relationship was terminated after a free public relations consultation. I'm single again and looking to mingle. Thanks Guido and Rent a Hitman." To any reasonable person, the site screamed parody, but Bob was learning that people desperate enough to hire a hitman aren't exactly reasonable people. Once word got out in law enforcement circles about Bob's honeypot, the arrests started piling up. There was Wendy Lynn Wine, a 51-year-old woman from Michigan who wanted her ex-husband dead. He'd cheated on her with the babysitter, and she wanted revenge. When she found rentahitman.com, she was actually suspicious. She even wrote to Bob saying, "This is kind of weird that your company is not on the deep or dark web," but her desire for revenge overrode her common sense. When an undercover state trooper met her in a parking lot to collect the $5,000 down payment, Wendy found out her suspicions were justified. She's now serving 7 to 20 years in prison. Then came one of the strangest cases Bob had ever seen. In February of 2023, Josiah Garcia, a 21-year-old Air National Guardsman from Tennessee, submitted an application to rentahitman.com. But he wasn't trying to hire a hitman, he wanted to be one. Josiah sent in his resume describing himself as an expert marksman who'd earned the nickname Reaper during his military service. He needed money to support his pregnant girlfriend and thought his shooting skills would transfer nicely to contract killing. His message to Bob ended with, "I'm looking for a job that pays well related to my military experience. Shooting and killing the marked target. Put me in, coach." The FBI set up a sting operation. An undercover agent met Josiah at a restaurant in Nashville pretending to be a hitman recruiter. When they handed him a fake target packet with photos and a $2,500 in cash, Josiah allegedly asked if he needed to provide photographic proof after completing the job. He was arrested before he could leave the parking lot. Of all the cases Bob has handled, one stands out as particularly disturbing. In 2023, an 18-year-old woman named Jasmine Barbosa from Miami contacted rentahitman.com with an unthinkable request. She wanted someone to kill her 3-year-old son. The reason? Her boyfriend didn't like the child. In text messages, he'd allegedly told her, "The kid is the problem. I hope you see that. All I ever wanted was to free you." He'd given her an ultimatum: get rid of the child or lose him forever. Jasmine had initially tried to lie, telling her boyfriend the deed was done, but when he demanded proof, she panicked. That's when she found rentahitman.com. Her request was urgent. She needed it done by Thursday, giving the hitman just days to act. Bob didn't hesitate. This wasn't a case for a sting operation or careful investigation. A child's life was in immediate danger. He contacted Miami-Dade police immediately, and they moved fast. At this point, you might be asking yourself the obvious question: how do people fall for this? How does anyone looking at a website offering hitman services on the regular internet with an FBI banner at the top, no less, think it's legitimate? The answer lies in the psychology of desperation. When people reach the point of wanting someone dead, they're not thinking clearly. Rage, fear, greed, these emotions cloud judgment in profound ways. Bob Irons, whether he realized it or not, had created the perfect trap. The site was professional enough to seem plausible to someone whose judgment was already compromised. It had all the elements of a real business, testimonials, a careers page, and even contact forms. But it also had those obvious red flags: the FBI banner, the joke HIPAA notice, and the over-the-top testimonials. Any reasonable person would see these and immediately understand it was satire. But people trying to hire hitmen aren't reasonable. They're desperate, and desperate people see what they want to see. Since 2010, Bob Irons has processed thousands of emails through rentahitman.com. He estimates that about 90% are either pranks or people who get the joke, but that remaining 10% represents hundreds of serious murder-for-hire requests. Think about that for a moment. Hundreds of people have been so desperate to kill someone that they've turned to an obvious parody website for help. And those are just the ones stupid enough to follow through with contacting the site. There's many more who haven't had that bravery. The website has directly led to over 150 arrests across multiple countries. The cases span the full spectrum of human dysfunction: spurned lovers, greedy relatives, business partners gone bad, and even parents trying to kill their own children. Each arrest represents at least one life saved, possibly more. Some requesters wanted entire families eliminated. Others provided hit lists with multiple names. And these numbers only account for the people who got caught. How many visited the site, realized it was a trap, and quietly abandoned their plans? How many were deterred by the existence of the site, afraid that any hitman website might be a police sting? We'll never know. Today, Bob Irons is 54 years old, married with children, living a quiet life in California. By day, he works in cybersecurity. By night, he's Guido Finelli, responding with would-be killers and forwarding their information to law enforcement. He doesn't get paid for this work. There's no government contract, no official relationship with law enforcement. Bob does this because he feels like it's his civic duty. "If I shut the site down, these people would just go somewhere else," Bob has said in interviews. "Maybe they'd find a real hitman. At least this way we catch them before anyone gets hurt." The website costs him about $200 a year to maintain. In exchange, he's potentially saved dozens, possibly hundreds of lives. It might be the best return on investment in the history of crime prevention. There's something beautifully ironic about rentahitman.com. In an age of sophisticated cybercrime, advanced encryption, and the dark web, one of law enforcement's most effective tools is a joke website that literally tells you it's a joke. The site has probably prevented more contract killings than any multi-million-dollar law enforcement initiative, not through advanced technology or undercover operations, but through a simple principle: stupid criminals make stupid mistakes. The website continues to operate today, exactly as it has for over a decade. Same fake testimonials, same FBI banner, and the same obvious parody that somehow keeps working. Because human nature doesn't change. There will always be people desperate enough, angry enough, or stupid enough to think violence is the answer. And as long as they're Googling "hire a hitman" instead of dealing with their problems like adults, Bob Irons will be waiting. So, what have we learned from the strange story of rentahitman.com? Maybe it's that the internet, for all its dangers, can sometimes be a force for good in the most unexpected ways. Maybe it's that one person really can make a difference, even accidentally. Or maybe the lesson is simpler than that. Maybe it's just this: if you're thinking about hiring a hitman online, you're already too stupid to get away with it. Helen Kaplan learned that lesson back in 2010, and so did Wendy Wine, Josiah Garcia, Jasmine Barbosa, and dozens of others. They thought they were hiring killers. Instead, they hired their own arrest warrants. All because a college student bought a domain name for a failed business and decided to see what would happen if he left it running. Sometimes the best traps are the ones that announce themselves. Sometimes the most effective law enforcement tool is a website that literally has an FBI banner on the homepage. And sometimes stupidity really is its own punishment. rentahitman.com is still active, still catching criminals, and of course, still saving lives. If you visit it right now, and I'm not suggesting you should if you have murder on your mind, you'll see the same site that's fooled so many people who should have known better. And Bob Hines? He's still there, checking his email every day, still playing Guido Fanelli when needed, still turning would-be killers into convicted felons, one stupid request at a time. But what do you think? Will people ever stop believing in the legitimacy of rentahitman.com, or will Bob keep racking up arrests until the end of the website? Let us know in the comments below. So, with that said, this has been the wild story of rentahitman.com. We'll see you in the next video.